the biggest mistake that people make coming to Asia is thinking that it's one market. It is absolutely not. What works in Indonesia does not necessarily work in Vietnam or in Thailand or in Laos or in Cambodia, etc. And that's what makes this super exciting.
Hello and welcome to another episode of YanaTV. Today we have a very special guest, Marc Nicholson, who is the founder of 1880, and I'm sure many of you at least heard about the club or maybe already a member. So Marc, thank you so much for joining us in the studio.
Hey, thank you. It's great to be here.
And I'm so curious to hear your journey, because when I look at you and know bits and pieces about your life, you have done so many things. So it's really hard to put you in a box. I'm like, is he an entrepreneur? Is he a family man? Is he a professional? Have you worked for someone ever?
Yes.
You have, okay.
Not very successfully, but yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know you in Asia for a very long time, but let's sort of start from the beginning. For those who might not know you that well, where were you born?
Sure. I was born in Montreal, Canada.
This is where you grew up?
I grew up in Montreal, so French-Canadian city, second largest French city in the world outside of Paris. So grew up in two languages. Montreal's a wonderful city. Had a great time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what did you do before you came to continent of Asia?
So that's a big question. So growing up in Montreal, I did a couple of things that were significant for me. I was an actor in a theater company. So I was like a child actor, if you like, but I was part of a theater company that was very special, and I became the chairman of the board actually when I was 14. And we did productions. So I was a member probably from when I was 10 till I was 18. We toured Canada, we toured Europe. I did radio, television, film work.
You're a superstar from very early age. Look at that.
But mostly I was in theater.
Okay.
And most of what we did, we created ourselves. So that was an amazing experience. And it led to me, we did a show once about teenage suicide. And as a result of that production, I wanted to go and volunteer for a suicide hotline.
Yep.
I was 16 at the time, and the requirement was you had to be 25, in fact, to work on a suicide hotline. But I had shared the script with them and told them about my involvement, and they said, okay, you can go through the training. I did, and after the training, I started to work on a suicide hotline. So my sort of last 2 years of high school, I was doing theater, I had sport and all that activity. And I had this very private thing that not many people knew I was doing it, but I was working on a suicide hotline. So anyway, Montreal. When I left, I went to school in the States, studied in university in the States. And then I came back to Canada, and I had a deep desire to work in development and human rights.
Okay.
And so I joined Canada's equivalent of the Peace Corps, and I went to live in a village in West Java in Indonesia, a tiny place called Chisurupan. And I lived with a family in this village that had 4 toilets or chuchi stations, if you like. So no running water. You wash yourself with your left hand, and it's a very beautiful culture and really sort of like an incredible experience. So the objective was that we were going to build a water delivery system to provide clean water to the villagers, and we worked with the villagers on that. And really one of the best years of my life. But because I my theater interest, I started a small theater kind of program.
There.
We wrote a play with the kids and performed it, and that was really magical. So that was maybe my first experience of living in Asia.
What age you were at the time?
I was 23 at the time,
Okay.
and did that for a year. Anyway, then I went back. I then decided to pursue a master's degree so I went to The Hague in Netherlands and studied. I did a degree in international law, social justice, and human rights. And after that, I moved to Cyprus. I worked for something called the Middle East Council of Churches, as the coordinator of the Justice, Peace, and Human Rights program, which is a bit of a mouthful. Towards the end of that, I really decided that I wanted to understand business and I wanted to get into business. I was quite disillusioned by that point of working as an activist in human rights. And
Why was that?
yeah, I mean, I think it was, I felt that change and power and influence resided outside of where I was.
So you couldn't make the change you wanted to make doing what you were doing.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's, in fact, it's a very competitive field.
Really?
And there's many people who are pursuing it, but there are only so many jobs that are available, and otherwise you have to sort of develop your own strategy of your own charity or what have you.
Yeah.
But I was pretty, sort of out there, and I didn't have a focus. And so I said, okay, I want to go and combine what I already have with a business degree. So I went and did an MBA in London.
Mm-hmm.
And in London, I met my wife. And
congratulations.
Yeah. So, well, exactly. Yeah. But, my wife, Jean, is Singaporean, and she had been living in London for a number of years. We studied together, and then we decided, when we graduated, we worked and lived together. And then in 2001, we were both working in .com businesses, and that was kind of the collapse of .com 1.0. Yeah. And we said, hey, let's go to Asia. I was very keen to move to somewhere in Asia. I thought it would be Shanghai or Shenzhen or what have you. But we sort of set up camp here in Singapore, and for a number of reasons, and in fact, SARS is one of those reasons, we never left. And I was going to set up a business in Shenzhen, but that was somewhat the epicenter of SARS. And so we decided it was not right to move our young family. We just had a baby. My daughter was born, and we said, maybe we shouldn't do that. Maybe we'll stick it out in Singapore. And then Jean got a job, and I started a business, and then life just sort of took over. And we never had a window to leave. And our life, I love Singapore. We've had a great time here raising our kids. And now I have my business here. So life is good. This is home.
And yeah. I know you have been here, more than 20 years?
21
right?
years.
21 years.
Exactly.
I mean, you have done many things. And even with 1880, you guys are doing all kinds of stuff right now. You're expanding, right?
Yes.
With the project and new projects, you're expanding to different cities in Asia. So I'm just curious about the entrepreneurial journey here.
Yeah.
So here you are, right? You come as a Western, okay, half Canadian, half French.
Yeah.
Here you are, you show up in Asia, you become the founder, you start the business.
Yeah.
A few tough questions, okay?
Please.
So what was the biggest challenge doing the business here?
Yeah, so it's not the first business I've done in Singapore. It's probably the 10th business I've done.
Okay, so you're like a surreal entrepreneur. Something works, something doesn't.
Correct. I am a habitually failed entrepreneur who happens to be successful for this window. So I've done many things that didn't work out.
That's funny.
Yeah, but I think it's true for most. And for the entrepreneurs out there, expect failure. It's a very, very healthy journey. It's not a fun journey, but it's a healthy one. So I had various companies before. Some did okay, some didn't do okay. And when I had the idea to start 1880, I wasn't really sure, and I thought it was quite ambitious. And really, another kind of important thing for entrepreneurs, if you can, is have a really wonderful, supportive spouse. So my wife kept saying to me, keep going. This is the thing you're meant to do.
But you guys were the first one, right? Is it the first private club in Singapore? Or
not the first. There were others, first of the sort of modern types. There are many clubs in Singapore, but you're right.
Yours is unique with everything that it offers.
Very nice of you to say. So when you ask, what's the biggest challenge? Okay, so raising money is a huge challenge. Getting people to believe that it's going to work. Acquiring customers, like selling membership and designing the space and finding the property, and all of those things are difficult. And those are the expectations that any entrepreneur has to be prepared to confront. The things that I wasn't prepared to confront were maybe with the things in my head. And this is what I always tell entrepreneurs, your biggest struggle is going to be with yourself. You know, exactly. It's those, to use a hackneyed saying, it's those self-limiting beliefs and those sort of voices in your head that try to protect you, really, that tell you you shouldn't do that, or you can't do this, or what have you. And that was like an amazing journey to confront those and push them back and fight them and sort of say, I'm going to keep going.
Did you had professionals helping or friends helping?
Yeah. So like I say, my wife was the one who kept, in the darkest times, I was like, maybe I could stop. She was like, no, keep going. And that she had my back was very reassuring. But also the consequence of not going ahead would have been far more drastic if I had just, said, oh, it was a great idea, but the market isn't right, or I'm not right, or what have you. So anyway, we went for it, and we're 6 years on. It's been amazing experience. It's exceeded all of my expectations by a large degree. And now we are, in the process of opening 2 more projects, one in Hong Kong and one in Bali in Indonesia. And they are, for some weird reason, going to open
at the exact timing.
Okay. which was not the intention. They were supposed to open 9 months apart, but some weird law.
So two babies at the same time.
Yes,
okay.
We're having twins at the same time.
Clearly, you're having. Do you know how much work it is when you have twins?
Yeah. Well, I can't say I know the answer to that, but I do know that making these 2 things and they feel like babies is all consuming. It's a lot. It's big, and it's really, really fun, and I'm loving it. Like, I feel very fortunate to be in this position. Yeah.
Things you learned in Singapore, working with the Singaporean market, even though Singapore is a very international market, but it's still Singaporean market, right? And here you go Bali, entirely different type of people living in Bali and going there. And Hong Kong is also different.
Yeah.
So how does that work business or mentality-wise?
Yeah, so I think that's a very good question. I had about 15 years of already living in Singapore, and I had many businesses, like I said, and I've worked with people, more senior than me and more junior than me. And so I kind of understood, like I culturally I understood. My family is Singaporean. And so I found the challenges there less bewildering. Going into a market like Hong Kong, which is in many ways more, it's everything Singapore is like a little bit more.
Yeah. And, it's a bit New Yorkish.
It's very
right?
New Yorkish. It's very, very, full on. It's very intense. And in many ways, it's more expensive and more challenging than Singapore. So that's been a really big learning curve on many fronts.
Why did you learn?
But in many ways, the cultural challenge is not with people in Hong Kong, like from Hong Kong, but with this. I find the expat community in Hong Kong is different from the expat community.
I would love to learn more about that.
I think there is. I was surprised by, let's say, the remnants of a colonial attitude, and I don't like that division. I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I think that maybe because I'm married to a Singaporean and I have Singaporean family, that I feel more integrated into Singapore society, whereas I find that more difficult in Hong Kong. And I find it's a series of like
Hong Kong.
two halves, and I could be wrong about that, but on one level, I find it very, very difficult to get where we want to, but on another level, I find a very cooperative attitude there. So I'm saying something that's slightly,
it's like a city of two tales, sort of a little bit, right?
Exactly, and two opposites can exist at the same time. And then there's all kinds of cultural things happening in Hong Kong that are strictly of these times, and so linguistically, we find that we will have to cater to a much larger Mandarin audience
than you probably expected.
Yeah, but there's a greater degree of mainland Chinese coming in, And there's definitely a shift in China, in Hong Kong, and that's exciting and fun to be part of. And so we're kind of riding that wave. And then Bali is a totally different kettle of fish, where I think I find great pleasure. That's been fascinating because we're working with a local team. They're based in Denpasar in Bali. They're 100% Indonesian, and they're really most beautiful kind of just great work ethic and the attitude of let's just get this done, and just beautiful. And so that's wonderful. And Bali is a very special place for those of us who know it and love it.
And Bali, the country, Bali is Indonesia, but it also isn't.
Correct.
Right? Bali is Bali. So my question, I guess, to you, okay, now you're doing this business and you guys opening a space,
Yeah.
right? So, but then how was your experience working with people there? I assume you work largely with local people, with Indonesians.
Yeah, 100%.
So what is the experience as an entrepreneur?
For me, really great. Like I said, I lived in Indonesia.
So right?
I have like my little repertoire of sentences that I remember, and that is, people always love it when you make an effort to
connect and
language. But I also have a huge fondness for the food. It's a different kind of energy, and it's a different experience than like how you motivate people and how you kind of. I want to say get the best out of, but that sounds somewhat
it's a very good way of putting it. It is good. We're all trying to get the best out of each other. It's like we're all walking each other home in a way, right?
And it's a cooperative effort, right? And you want to find the way to work and bring out the very best in people and bring out the best in yourself, right?
Exactly. As a leader also, right? Exactly.
Of the project. So that's been really fun. And I would say it's almost like being three different people. Like what works in Singapore, what works in Bali, and what works in Hong Kong are three different things. And I'm familiar with entrepreneurs who operate much bigger businesses in many more countries. Let's say 16 markets across Southeast Asia or across Asia, and I know that those people would say the biggest mistake that people make coming to Asia is thinking that it's one market.
Mm-hmm.
It is absolutely not. What works in Indonesia does not necessarily work in Vietnam or in Thailand or in Laos or in Cambodia, etc. And that's what makes this super exciting. That's what makes it way more challenging. But it's not to say that things that you can't build a business across Asia that will satisfy local market demand. Absolutely can, but just don't make the assumption that because it worked in Hong Kong, it's going to work in Bali, or because it worked in Singapore, it's going to work in Vietnam. Yeah.
So is there like a basic line that, let's say, people who go into business, and maybe especially for foreigners, people like us, even though we live here for many years, we were not born here, right? So, and we also look different. We don't look Asian.
Yeah.
So people like us who go into the market here and start the business, let's start Singapore, Hong Kong, Bali. What do you need to pay attention to?
I think a big mistake that people make coming out here is thinking that a very disciplined or aggressive approach, like even the cultural differences of working in North America and working in the UK are pronounced.
Mm-hmm.
They're significant. And coming out to Asia, I've met chefs who have had entire teams walk out of their kitchen because they came with like a Gordon Ramsay-esque approach, and they're very confrontational and they're very hard on people. It's like, do your work, and they will yell and they will swear and what have you. And people will take offense on a totally different level, and they will literally just walk out the room.
Yeah.
And like, sorry, you don't treat me. So personal respect is something that I think is you have to be very, very sensitive to. Just in the world in general, kindness kind of wins.
Kindness works.
Yeah,
exactly.
Kindness just works. Really, just being a nice human being and being kind and respectful. Generally, people like to work in that environment. But I also know people who there's the abused child syndrome where you're just really, really hard on people and you push them really hard and they will perform harder. this is not my style. I appreciate that exists and people who want to work that way can have it. But I think we come from a very, very kind of collaborative ethos where working together. So this is something that I think intellectually I have processed over time, which is that came from a time and a place where the individual is considered the most important. Your individual rights, your individual freedoms, me, right? I would argue in favor of protecting the unit over the individual and the family and broadens outward. And I do think that we often misinterpret the approach that people take, whether it's Asia misinterpreting the West or it's the West misinterpreting this market.
You just briefly shared about expat community, and I know, for the 1880, you guys have a very sort of diverse membership.
Correct.
So you have a lot of expatriates and you have a lot of local people also.
Yes.
And so again, just your experience as, I don't know, what do we call you? Do we call you expat? Do we call you half Singaporean, right?
Yeah.
So your experience of expats and locals people here.
Yeah, so that's a fun question, because I originally said that we wouldn't care once you walk in the door what race, religion, gender you are. We're interested in nothing more than your mind and your curiosity and your kind of passion for whatever it is, helping the world, dance, music, whatever those things are that drive you. That's what I was interested. We're completely agnostic on difference. But it became very clear to me that misses the point. And over the years, I've figured out that you absolutely want to celebrate the differences that people bring in, their cultural differences, their historic differences, their belief systems and their way of thinking. That is the real juice. That's what makes the kaleidoscope so beautiful. And so that's something that now I think we actively look for difference, and we want to celebrate it.
You just said that you're not the same person you have been 20 years ago.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you look at Mark 20 years ago and you would like maybe to say something to him, so what would you say?
Because I think it's important to make those mistakes and have those qualities. Like, had I been as wise when I was 20 or 20 years ago, I might be living on a mountain and
be a sage.
And be a sage. And
I can see that personality in you.
I don't need to do all these crazy things. But I love the energy of and the search for your own meaning and your own purpose. And that is maybe life's journey, and we all need to go on it. So more than anything, I would say stop worrying about what you're doing. Just keep going. There was more anxiety than there was necessary. There were more sleepless nights than was necessary. And just the simple belief that the worst case scenario is just not that bad. So that's a practice that I've started to have, which is just meditate on the idea of what is your deepest fear, and then take it apart. And then you go, oh, well, there's nothing really to fear.
It's not that bad.
It's not that bad, right? Worst case, you're still going to get up and be able to walk the next morning.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing, is just calm down and enjoy the ride. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was such a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
That was Marc Nicholson on YanaTV, and Mark and I would love to hear from you guys, right, Mark?
Absolutely.
So in the comments, please let us know about your entrepreneurial journey. And especially if you have this diversity, maybe you worked in different countries, so you run businesses in different countries. Just curious to hear, what did you learn? I mean, it's all about collective. We are all sharing here. And of course, remember, subscribe to the YouTube channel, share this video with friends, and thank you and appreciation to the Muse Studio, our venue and videography partner, for supporting YanaTV. See you next time.
It's a very nuanced thing, and I feel
I'm
like
loving it. I'm loving it.
Yeah, I don't want to get canceled for anything here. Yeah.
Like they say in Germany, Thema wechseln, different topic.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, move on.